Have you ever felt profoundly and utterly trapped in a frustrating, demoralizing cycle of diet and exercise, only to see the unforgiving numbers on the scale refuse to budge, or worse, creep insidiously upward? You find yourself engaged in a meticulous, almost obsessive ritual of counting every single calorie, weighing every portion of food, and pushing your body through grueling, sweat-drenched workouts that leave you exhausted and sore. Yet the tangible results you so desperately seek remain minimal if they decide to manifest at all. This experience can be incredibly disheartening, leading to a pervasive sense of failure and the belief that your body is somehow broken or uniquely resistant to change. But what if the fundamental rule you have been so diligently and painfully following, the deeply ingrained and widely preached mantra that weight loss is simply a matter of calories in versus calories out, is not the whole, unvarnished truth? What if this simplistic equation, while not entirely incorrect, is a dangerously incomplete picture of our complex human metabolism? Imagine for a moment that there is a hidden hormonal switch concealed deep within the intricate machinery of your body, a master regulator that acts as the true and ultimate gatekeeper of fat storage. And what if, through no fault of your own, but by following conventional wisdom, you have been unknowingly and repeatedly flipping this critical switch in the wrong direction every single morning, day after day? The genuine, lasting secret to achieving effortless and sustainable weight management does not, as you have been led to believe, lie in ever-increasing levels of sacrifice, deprivation, or physical pain. It is not about starving yourself more or punishing your body with more exercise. Instead, the key to unlocking your body's natural ability to burn fat and maintain a healthy weight resides in understanding and strategically outsmarting this one singularly powerful hormone. The solution, the pivotal first step on this new path, is far simpler and more accessible than you could possibly imagine, and it begins not in the gym or with a complicated meal plan, but in the very first moments after you wake up. The central dogma of weight management, taught for decades by health authorities, personal trainers, and well-meaning doctors, has been built upon a simple and seemingly logical foundation. Eating an excess of calories makes you fat. If you consume more energy than you expend, your body will store the surplus as adipose tissue. This principle, often referred to as the first law of thermodynamics applied to the human body, is not technically false, but it is profoundly misleading because it treats all calories as equal and ignores the powerful biological instructions that tell our bodies what to do with those calories. To truly grasp the flaw in this model, we must shift our focus from the symptom, which is the caloric surplus, to the root cause, which is the hormonal signal that commands fat storage. A brilliant illustration of this principle comes from the work of Dr. Ben Bikman, a leading metabolism scientist and professor. He often describes a common laboratory experiment conducted by his students designed to demonstrate the fundamental requirements for making fat cells, or adipocytes, grow. In this experiment, the students place living human fat cells into a petri dish. They then submerge these cells in a specially prepared nutrient-rich culture medium, a veritable liquid buffet, overflowing with all the energy substrates a cell could ever want: glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids. According to the calories in, calories out model, these cells, swimming in an ocean of energy, should logically gorge themselves and swell up with fat, yet perplexingly, very little happens. The fat cells remain small, almost inert, seemingly oblivious to the caloric feast surrounding them. They have unlimited access to energy, but they lack the specific instruction to store it. Then, the scientists introduce a single critical ingredient to the mixture: the hormone insulin. The transformation that follows is nothing short of immediate and dramatic. Within just a few hours of insulin's introduction, the once tiny dormant cells begin to balloon, visibly filling with lipid droplets. 6 hours later, they have swelled to a significantly larger size. A few more hours after that, they are enormous, engorged with fat. The calories, the energy, the building blocks for fat were present the entire time, but it was the introduction of insulin that acted as the key in the lock. the unequivocal command that unlocked the cellular floodgates and instructed the fat cells to stop burning energy and start storing it with relentless efficiency. This experiment reveals a non-negotiable biological truth. Fat cells do not get fat simply because calories are available, they get fat because insulin tells them to. If a carefully controlled laboratory experiment feels too abstract or distant from the complexities of real human life, then we must consider one of the most convincing and heartbreaking pieces of evidence available, a tragic human condition known as diabulimia. This devastating eating disorder is observed in some individuals, particularly young women who have type 1 diabetes. These individuals live under the immense and constant pressure of managing their chronic illness while also navigating the societal obsession with thinness. Through a tragic process of discovery, they learn a dark and dangerous secret. Their insulin syringe holds the absolute and ultimate power over their body fat. In type 1 diabetes, the pancreas can no longer produce insulin, so it must be injected to manage blood sugar and allow the body's cells to take in glucose for energy. By deliberately and systematically underdosing their required insulin, these individuals can consume massive quantities of food, often binging on thousands of calories in a single sitting, far more than the average person would ever eat. And yet, they will not gain a single pound of fat. In fact, they will continue to lose weight. As long as their insulin levels are kept artificially and dangerously low, their body is biologically incapable of executing the command to store that vast excess of energy as fat. The calories are consumed, but without the hormonal key, the door to the fat cells remains bolted shut. The surplus glucose and other nutrients have nowhere to go and are eventually excreted from the body, unused. While on the surface they may achieve the thinness they desperately desire, they are paying a horrific and silent metabolic price. They are, in essence, starving in the midst of plenty, slowly dying as their bodies break down muscle and organ tissue for fuel and slide into a life-threatening state of diabetic ketoacidosis. This heartbreaking reality, as grim as it is, provides the most undeniable and powerful proof imaginable that you simply cannot get fat unless the hormone insulin is elevated. It is a profound, non-negotiable biological law that transcends willpower, calorie counting, and behavioral choices. The root cause of obesity and weight gain at its most fundamental level is not a failure of character. It is a disorder of hormonal regulation, with insulin sitting squarely on the throne as the master commander of fat storage. Understanding insulin's supreme role as the gatekeeper of fat is the first critical piece of the puzzle, but the second, equally important piece is knowing precisely when this powerful hormone is most likely to be working against your metabolic goals. For the vast majority of people, the most metabolically treacherous and sensitive period of the entire 24-hour day is the first couple of hours immediately after waking up. This might seem entirely counterintuitive, especially for those who practice some form of intermittent fasting by skipping their evening meal. They often wake up in a fasted state, feeling lean, light, and primed to refuel their bodies for the day ahead. However, beneath this feeling of emptiness, a natural, ancient, and powerful hormonal event is unfolding behind the scenes, a process known to endocrinologists as the dawn phenomenon or the dawn effect. This physiological process is not a sign of dysfunction. Rather, it is a sophisticated and essential survival mechanism that is hardwired into the biological clock of every single human being. Several hours before you would naturally wake up, typically around 4 a.m., your body begins its intricate preparations for the coming day. Your brain and central nervous system start to come online, increasing their activity and energy requirements. To meet this rising demand for fuel, your body's internal clock signals the release of a cascade of hormones, most notably a significant surge of the hormone cortisol from your adrenal glands. Cortisol, often maligned as the stress hormone, in this context acts as a natural and benevolent alarm clock. Its primary job in the morning is to signal your liver to initiate a process of breaking down its stored form of sugar, known as glycogen, and releasing it as fresh glucose directly into your bloodstream. This provides your brain and muscles with an immediate source of fast-burning, readily available energy to help you wake up, feel alert, and get moving. The unavoidable consequence of this brilliant mechanism, however, is that your blood sugar level is already significantly elevated the very moment your eyes open, even before you have taken a single sip of water or a single bite of food. To manage this natural and necessary rise in blood sugar and prevent it from reaching dangerous levels, your pancreas preemptively releases a corresponding amount of insulin. This means that you wake up every single morning in a state of natural physiological insulin resistance, a time when your body is already dealing with a glucose load and is therefore hormonally primed to store any additional energy rather than burn it. Eating during this sensitive window, particularly a meal high in carbohydrates, is metabolically akin to pouring gasoline on an already burning fire. The food you consume is far more likely to be met with an exaggerated insulin response and shuttled directly into your fat cells for storage. If the morning hours represent a hormonal and metabolic minefield, a period of heightened sensitivity where your body is predisposed to storing fat, then the logical question becomes how to navigate this treacherous terrain safely and effectively. The solution does not require you to resort to extreme or overly complicated fasting protocols, many of which demand significant discipline, mental fortitude, and inconvenient preparation that can be difficult to sustain in the long run. Instead, Dr. Ben Bikman proposes a far simpler, more elegant, and infinitely more accessible strategy that he refers to as the insulin trick. The core idea behind this approach is to work intelligently with your body's natural morning rhythm instead of ignorantly fighting against it. The first rule of this trick is beautifully simple: wait. Upon waking, resist the ingrained habit of heading straight for the kitchen or the coffee pot. Your body, through the wisdom of the dawn effect, has just provided you with a free, high-quality, perfectly timed shot of energy in the form of elevated blood glucose. Don't waste it by immediately piling more fuel on top of it. Use this gifted energy. Take the first 20, 30, or even 60 minutes of your day to do something else entirely. This is a perfect window to hydrate with a large glass of water, perhaps with a pinch of sea salt to replenish electrolytes. You could plan your schedule for the day, go for a short, gentle walk in the morning sunlight to help set your circadian rhythm, perform some light stretching or mobility exercises, read a few pages of a book, or dive into a period of focused, uninterrupted work. For many, this fasted morning state, characterized by elevated cortisol and low circulating insulin from the overnight fast, is a window of peak mental clarity and physical energy. By simply delaying your first meal, you allow your body the crucial time it needs for the morning cortisol surge to begin to recede, and for the initial wave of insulin to do its job of clearing the dawn effect's glucose from the bloodstream. When you do finally sit down to eat, you will be in a much more metabolically favorable state, one where your insulin sensitivity has improved and your body is more prepared to utilize the incoming nutrients for immediate fuel rather than for long-term storage in your fat cells. The second and equally crucial part of this simple metabolic trick is to fundamentally transform what you consume for your first meal of the day. It is a modern tragedy that the meal we call breakfast has, for most people in the Western world, devolved into little more than a socially acceptable form of morning dessert. The standard breakfast fare of sugary cereals, pastries, toast with jam, sweetened yogurts, muffins, bagels, and sugar-laden coffees and juices is composed almost entirely of refined sugar and processed starches. Consuming these types of foods first thing in the morning, during the period of natural insulin resistance, is arguably the single worst thing you can do for your metabolic health and your waistline. This carbohydrate-heavy meal sends your already elevated morning blood sugar and insulin levels into the stratosphere, creating a massive hormonal surge that slams the door shut on fat burning and flings the door wide open for fat storage, a state that can persist for many hours. Instead of perpetuating this cycle, you must make your first meal a conscious, mindful ritual designed to support your hormonal health. The goal is to change your breakfast overnight, both literally and figuratively. The new focus should be on a meal that is rich in high-quality protein and healthy fats, with abundant fiber from non-starchy vegetables or low-sugar fruits. Think of meals like 3 whole eggs scrambled in butter or coconut oil with a side of sautéed spinach and a quarter of an avocado. Consider a bowl of full-fat, unsweetened Greek yogurt topped with a small handful of walnuts, chia seeds, and a few fresh berries. Another excellent option is a well-formulated protein smoothie made with a high-quality, unsweetened protein powder, unsweetened almond milk, a tablespoon of almond butter for healthy fat, and a large handful of greens like kale or spinach. This type of meal composition will have a minimal and gentle impact on your blood sugar and insulin levels, keeping you feeling full, satiated, and mentally sharp for hours. It effectively sets a fat-burning, appetite-stabilizing tone for the entire rest of the day, preventing the mid-morning energy crash and subsequent craving for more sugar that inevitably follows a conventional carbohydrate-based breakfast. To truly master your mornings and unlock the full potential of this metabolic strategy, it is absolutely crucial to recognize and address 2 common yet hidden factors in your daily routine that can silently sabotage your best efforts: the quality of your sleep and the timing of your morning coffee. Your cortisol levels, the very hormone that orchestrates the dawn effect, are intimately and inextricably tied to your circadian rhythm, which is primarily regulated by your sleep-wake cycle. When you fail to get a sufficient amount of high-quality sleep, your body perceives this deprivation as a major physiological stressor equivalent to an injury or a threat. In response to this perceived stress, your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis can become dysregulated, causing your body to overproduce cortisol. This results in morning cortisol levels that can be 2 or even 3 times higher than they would be after a restful night. This dramatically amplified cortisol surge leads to a much bigger release of glucose from your liver, a more significant spike in morning blood sugar, and consequently a much stronger and more forceful insulin response to bring it all back down. In short, poor sleep makes you profoundly more insulin resistant before you even get out of bed, setting you up for a day of metabolic struggle. This hormonal chaos also directly impacts your brain and your behavior. The excess cortisol readily crosses the blood-brain barrier and powerfully influences the parts of your brain that control hunger, reward, and impulse control, such as the hypothalamus and the amygdala. It cranks up the production of appetite-stimulating proteins and hormones, making you feel ravenous. Simultaneously, it enhances the release of dopamine in response to highly palatable, energy-dense foods. This is the precise biological reason why, after a bad night's sleep, you do not just feel a little hungrier. You specifically and intensely crave sugary, starchy, and fatty comfort foods. Your own biology is actively working against your best intentions, making it nearly impossible to summon the willpower to stick to a healthy routine. Then, we must consider the beloved and often non-negotiable morning ritual of drinking coffee. For millions, a cup of coffee is the indispensable catalyst that transforms them from a groggy state into a functional human being. While coffee itself, particularly when black, is not inherently bad and contains beneficial antioxidants, its timing can present a significant metabolic problem, especially when consumed first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Scientific studies have demonstrated that caffeine, the active stimulant in coffee, can significantly increase the insulin response to any carbohydrates consumed alongside or after it. When you drink coffee, especially at the peak of your morning cortisol and glucose surge, you are essentially forcing your pancreas to work much harder. At its very core, the insulin trick is not a diet, a fad, or a temporary fix. It is a profound and practical application of hormonal intelligence. It is a strategy built upon the foundational understanding that the morning is the one part of the day where your key metabolic hormones behave in a highly predictable and consistent pattern across nearly all individuals. Later in the day, your insulin levels become a far more complex and chaotic variable, influenced by a multitude of unpredictable factors: the stress of a difficult meeting at work, the precise timing and composition of your lunch, your afternoon activity levels, your emotional state. making them much harder to consciously predict and control. By taking deliberate and mindful control of your morning hormonal environment, you lay a stable, resilient metabolic foundation for everything that follows. A well-timed, protein and fat-focused first meal acts as a powerful metabolic signal. It kickstarts fat-burning processes, stabilizes your appetite for hours to come, enhances mental clarity, and communicates to your body that it should use the energy you provide for the day's activities, not hoard it in your fat cells for a winter of scarcity that never arrives in our modern world of abundance. This approach is not designed to produce the kind of dramatic, rapid weight loss that is almost always physiologically stressful and ultimately unsustainable. Instead, it serves as a powerful and fundamental starting point, a paradigm shift in how you approach your relationship with food and your body. By mindfully managing your insulin response in the morning, you gently coax your body into a state where losing weight and maintaining a healthy metabolism becomes easier, more intuitive, and more natural, freeing you from the constant, exhausting struggle of calorie counting and deprivation. You are no longer waging a frustrating war against your own biology. For perhaps the first time, you are finally working in elegant harmony with it. This one simple change, this commitment to outsmarting your morning hormones, starting tomorrow morning, can be the single most profound and lasting step you ever take toward reclaiming control over your metabolism, your energy, and your long-term health.